A flare-up of ulcerative colitis could not have come at a worse time for Newington High School senior Toni Laites. The 17-year-old senior missed the final games of her senior lacrosse season, her award and scholarship programs, the final weeks of school, and, worst of all, she was about to miss the senior prom. Friday, as her classmates prepared for the prom at the Aqua Turf Club in Southington, Laites was in tears in her sixth-floor room at Connecticut Children's Medical Center in Hartford. "We had hoped this week I was going to react better to the fluids, the steroids, the IVs," she said. But she wasn't getting better as quickly as she and her doctors had hoped. The treatment regimen her doctors worked up was helping, but Toni was still too sick to go home. "As for the prom, I told her no way," said Dr. Victoria Grossi, a pediatric gastroenterologist at CCMC. "I was sitting in there pouting," Toni said. "I had no hope at all today. I was just sitting here in the dark realizing I was going to miss my prom," but Grossi and her colleagues kept thinking and talking and working. Toni was feeling better, which was a step forward. Maybe they could figure something out. She was still too sick to go home, but maybe she could escape the hospital for a few hours. Grossi contacted hospital administrators and Toni's care team developed a plan. Maybe, just maybe, Toni would be able to go to her prom. Her mother, Leslie Ferreira, went to work, too. Students who don't attend school on the day of the prom cannot attend, so school administrators would have to make an exception. About 3 p.m., they all had a plan in place. Toni's doctors and nurses crowded into her room. Toni, dejected, lay in her hospital bed receiving a transfusion. She complained about some blood smeared on the back of her right hand. "Oh, that's all right, we'll just wash that off before you go to prom tonight," Grossi said. Toni looked at Grossi, then said, "You're lying." And then the tears began to flow. "From Toni and the doctors and nurses, we got special permission for you to be out of the hospital from 6 to 10, so you can do pictures with everybody, so you can go," Grossi said. "So I have to come back?" Toni asked. "You have to come back," Grossi said. "My day just turned really good," Toni said later. "There was a lot of crying today, but now it's happy tears." Toni Laites, a 17-year-old from Newington High School, surprised her friends at the senior prom at the Aqua Turf after all. Laites, who has been inpatient at the Connecticut Children's Medical Center, just finished an infusion prior to joining her friends Friday evening when she found out the hospital would grant her a therapeutic leave to attend the event. Her nurses and family did her hair and makeup in her hospital room prior to leaving and will need to return to the hospital before 11 p.m. John Woik, a little after 4 p.m., Toni's mother arrived at the hospital with her prom dress. Her stepsister, Andrea Ferreira, began to work on her makeup. Chelsea Lepis, a pediatric resident at CCMC, then went to work on Toni's hair. All the while, the transfusion continued and a nurse checked Toni's blood pressure and temperature. Petra Amrine, a nurse and a clinical care coordinator at CCMC, said she and her colleagues were suffering along with Toni. "She was just lying on the couch crying," Amrine said. "There was nothing I could say or do. It's hard. As a nurse, I just want to make everything better for my patients." As the plan came together for Toni to attend the prom, the joy spread across the floor. "Tonight is one of the happiest moments I've had as a nurse," Amrine said. "She's a great girl." Toni put on her prom dress and made a grand entrance into the hallway, where a dozen doctors and nurses broke into applause. Toni hugged Grossi and Amrine. It was just like Cinderella. Toni could leave, but would have to be back by 11 p.m. Although Grossi told her there might be a little wiggle room, they all killed themselves to get this to happen for her. Leslie Ferreira said. "I can't say how grateful I am." Outside CCMC, Toni climbed into her stepfather's Ford F-150 for the ride to Southington. "It wasn't a golden carriage, but it would do." The hope was to surprise Toni's date, Colin Freeman, and Toni's friends. But Colin's mother tipped him off. He said he was happy to see his date arrive. "I'm surprised. I'm impressed she pulled it off." Another friend, Allie Holdcroft, ran over and wrapped her arms around Toni. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. Toni's father and stepmother, Josh and Verna Laites, and her mom and stepdad, Thomas Ferreira, smiled and snapped photos. And for the next few hours, Toni got to be a carefree high school senior.